To do this community town hall on the Eastside TAD. So you might be wondering when I say power and party and why does it matter? Power is our C4 organization. And so the short version is we do issue advocacy and organizing in our power capacity that we want our candidates to sign on to in the Working Families Party side. And so you might see on your chair the economic mobility mandate. That's the mandate that all Working Families Party candidates have to sign on to. It's also how we determine what issues we organize around. So when it comes to TADs, you might have been like, what does Working Families have to do with TADs, right? But if you look at our mandate, our first one is housing and community stability. So TADs impact that. And number 4 is government transparency and civic power. And so one of the big things we want to make sure is that everyone's voice is heard, and communities are heard, and they're uplifted when it comes to talking about TADs and making decisions about TADs. And so that's why we're here tonight. We have great partners. We have great folks on the panel. Thank you everyone for showing up, and actually on time. Like, we intentionally set back the time a little bit to give folks time, but everyone was like here and ready to go, and so we appreciate that. So thank you for coming out tonight. I'm gonna turn it over to Rohit.
Okay, how we doing? We good? Yes, we good? Good. All right. I'm very, very grateful to see so many of you, many people who I've got to know very well over the past little bit. I am Rohit Malhotra, for those of you who I don't know, and I'm a team member here at the Center for Civic Innovation, one of the founding team members. And first and foremost, I want to give a really big shout out to the team that's been working tirelessly at the Center for Civic Innovation for putting this on. So we could give them a thank the team that worked with Families Power, Housing Justice League, ACPC. This work doesn't happen without community. There are a few things I want to say up top. I'll tell you what we're going to be doing today. I'll be leading us through a Civics 101, a TAD 101 today, which will be fun. And then we'll have some conversation and be able to close out with some exercises. But I want to start off by being like, we're not new to this. This is not new. This is not new conversation. There are many of you that have been having conversation about investing in communities, what it means to invest in communities, the necessary conditions that are here already, that have been here before this year, before last year. For a long time, we've been having a conversation about the fact that there are neighborhoods and communities in Atlanta that have not received the investment that they deserve. And we have to figure out how to make that right. And that is our North Star for this conversation. But this conversation didn't start with TADs. It's not going to be solved with TADs. It's not going to finish with TADs. This is about communities and the people who we are fighting for and that we believe in and that are at the center of these conversations. Second thing is that you may think we have an opinion of what should or shouldn't happen on this. This is a C3 space. If you want to talk politics, we can do that afterward at church next door if they'd like to, or at church across the street on Sunday, wherever you need to. That can happen there. But this is not about scoring political points. This is not about figuring out who did what right or where people should vote or shouldn't vote. This is about creating community understanding so that you can ask questions, so you can be curious. You can challenge even your own assumptions on things. I hope every single person in here walks away learning something, because And even crafting this and putting it together, we learned so much. We want to provide you with every piece of research we were able to put together and answer the questions that you have. And if there are questions we cannot answer, we'll make sure to get you answers. So I wanted to say that as well. The third thing is, nobody is paying us to do this. I want to make that explicitly clear. This is not an event that is paid for by the city of Atlanta. This is not an event that is some like big donor came in and said, I want to make sure that y'all create a narrative around TADS or don't. No. All right. Maybe that's some other events. That's not this one. So this event was created because of the influx of people who came to us and said, this is a conversation we want to have, and we want to do it the way that we always known CCI would do it, which is nonpartisan, making sure that we are having the data-driven part of this conversation, but that we are asking tough, open questions that are on your mind. And that is important for us. This is also a part of a series. This isn't the only conversation we're going to have. And this isn't the only way we're going to have this conversation. So I'm glad we're kicking off here. We're going to take learnings from this, and we have 3 more of these planned to be able to make sure that we can reach more and more residents and neighborhoods. It's why we have so many trusted community partners to make sure that we can do that. But also, if you'd like to be a donor of the Center for Civic Innovation, you can go to civicatlanta.org/donate. It is tough times for organizations that are trying to fight for democracy to stay intact. I will tell you right now, that has become a threat to power. And you investing in it, the only way that these types of institutions survive and make it is that if you take a bet on it. So I really, really encourage you, if you have an extra few bucks and want to contribute to something that matters, become a donor with the Center for Civic Innovation. I think it's gonna serve this community and the city really well, as it has been over the course of the past now 12 years. So congratulations to the team for that. So today, what are we doing here today, and what are we trying to accomplish? So at the top, we are going to be doing a TADS 101, a TADTalk, if you will. That joke will get so lame by the end of this. It's already, it should become a drinking game. But look, TADS 101 is basically, we tried to design it so we could talk to our friends about TADS. So there are going to be some of you who are already experts on TADS, and you're like, well, that's not the intricate way to describe. Got it. Okay, cool. Save that for the front. Got it. You're the expert. Got it. There are a lot of people in this room who are here because TADS are new to them, or they've only heard a few pieces. We've got students in the room as well. We got folks who have not been involved in these conversations. We want to make sure we give everybody the grace of being able to have the conversation in a way that we can all start from the same page. Because we shouldn't disagree about what TADS are and how they function. We can have that conversation on what should happen with them, but they do exist. So I want to be able to have a one-on-one, just break down and give you what you need. I will answer as many questions as I can. We have a whole team of experts that have different pieces of this that will also chime in as need be. But I appreciate those of you who are experts in the room, but I also hope you'll leave room for those of us who are still learning and trying to make sure we have a stronger understanding. The thing after that is we actually have 2 amazing folks that we're going to have a conversation with, because data is good, but data is only as good as contextualizing and humanizing it in the real experiences that people are going through every day. So we're going to talk about how TADS affect communities and residents, but also how TADS affect small businesses. And we're not going to talk about it in terms of TADS. We're going to just talk about what small businesses are asking for, what they need, and whether TADS can actually be a vehicle for that. Same thing for residents. The third thing, because you might have this question up top, wait, if you can, to this part of it, which is we're going to challenge you to really think about what it is that where you think we should be making investments as a city, and then we'll get into later whether that can actually happen through TADS or not. Because oftentimes we kind of pick and choose. We're like, oh yeah, TAD did that. TAD, I don't know TAD like that. So we're going to make sure that if TAD did it, we're going to make sure TAD gets the credit for doing it. If TAD didn't do it, TAD doesn't get the credit for it. Fair? So, and we'll have that conversation. It's a little bit more complicated and complex than you may think. Even for those of you who already have formed an opinion about where you stand on this, I hope you'll take that as an opportunity to really do that. So we'll get you participating a little bit. And then we are currently, we are in the Eastside TAD right now. So this location is located in the Eastside TAD. We were intentional in choosing locations that were inside of TADS, and this one was a little easier for us to secure than others. So we started here, not because it's a priority, it is because it was the easiest to book, because we just had to talk to each other. So, but we're going to talk about both the Eastside TAD and the Beltline TAD today, specifically what we know, but also what we don't know. And then the last thing is that we'll have a bit of discussion. Happy to have you all chime in wherever. And then next steps to engage, not only with us. This might be your avenue in your home to engage, but you might have other places and other ways that you want to engage. We're going to show you where the city is doing engagement efforts. We want you to participate in that, and also other community efforts that are underway. And if you have other things to share, you can do that too. Does this sound good? Good? Okay, amazing. Oh, great, thank you. All right, so let's get into it. This is going to be so exciting. I'm very excited to talk to you about TADs. So, for just baseline 101, this sentence is going to make so much more sense after we talk about what TADs are. But I just want to start off at the top, that TADs are a public financing tool. Already lost half of you. It's a public financing tool that uses future tax increases in a designated area to pay for improvements today in that same area. Okay? Don't worry, I'll go more into it. For those of you who are like, I'll go into what that means. But it's using future tax increases in a designated area to fund things in that same area today. Okay? So the theory of change, so if you were like, so what is the belief behind TADs? So TADs are a tool that are used around the country, and the conversation around TADs have happened here in Georgia for quite some time. But in the 90s is really when the TADs started to pick up as a financing tool, meaning a tool for governments to use to be able to have the money to pay for things, right? And so the theory of change behind it is that if you invest in an area, particularly an area that has not received the investment that it deserves, so underinvestment, or that it's blighted, meaning like, people haven't done what they're supposed to do to take care of the spot, then the property value, if you actually invest in those areas, then over time, the property value will go up in the future. So if I invest in something that hasn't received investment, property value will then go up, which ultimately will mean that I'll have more money that I can use for public expenditures. Okay? So that's the theory behind TADs and why TADs exist in the first place. So let's move away from TADs for a second. So what we know is that for decades, the city of Atlanta and governments around the country have had to make really tough decisions about how do I make investments in community, in neighborhood. There will be people who will say, we've never talked about making investments in these neighborhoods or communities before. Wrong. We have made had those conversations because there's a variety of different tools that are available to make an investment in a neighborhood or a community. They have their limitations, but they do exist. The simplest is just budgeting for it. So every year, the city of Atlanta goes through a budgeting process where it says we want to put money into this, and we want to put money into that. And then a huge part of how the city operates on a day-to-day basis, that money goes into what's called the general fund. The general fund is, do you know how big it is? What would you guess? What would you guess the size of the general fund is? Okay, got it. How about you? What would you guess?
Of the whole city?
Yeah, for the entire city of Atlanta.
I don't know, like 200 million? I don't know.
200, was it a B or an M? This is a big difference. So.
Yeah, what about a billion?
Okay, what about a billion? Okay, what about a billion? What do you think? Several hundred million. What do you think?
500 million.
Okay, 500 million. Yeah. So it's a little over $970 million, right, in the general fund. So good job. Yeah, that's great. Great guess. Have anybody tried Price is Right? This would be, maybe that's how we fund that. Yeah, so look, this is, relatively speaking, like, this is a small budget. For 500, there's only 503,000 people in the city of Atlanta. Some of y'all think about Atlanta as like that way. Trust me, if it's not inside the city of Atlanta limits, you are not from Atlanta, or the thing is not from Atlanta. Again, I grew up in Gwinnett, so I'm owning it and claiming it. But what is really important is the city of Atlanta has about $1 billion every year that it determines where it wants to put its money. Some of it is already predetermined. Like, we're going to put this much into firefighters, this much into this and that. Do you know where the majority of the money goes? Schools, debt, public safety and policing. I'll let you all do the debate on which is which, right? So it is important because public safety is it probably encompasses more than just policing. However, policing is the highest departmental budget in the City of Atlanta's budget, right? So it's about 33% of the City of Atlanta's budget. So about a third. If you add police, fire, corrections, it comes out to a little over 50% of the City of Atlanta's budget. So this is important because the City of Atlanta can make decisions from this budget on where it's going to put its money. And that is one way to do it. So if you want to make an investment in a neighborhood and community, you could say, I want to make sure from the general fund we put that money in. Because as you know, if the City of Atlanta wants to build something or do something, it can find money to do so. The second thing is you can do pay as you go. So hey, I want to build this thing, and as we generate more tax, then I will use that tax to pay for more of it. Obviously that would be very slow, it's very unpredictable, but it is a way to pay for it. I won't go through all of this, but it's like, you can increase taxes, you can issue a bond, which is borrowing money, you can get grants from federal or state institutions, you can incentivize private developers, you go to jail for it sometimes, but ultimately, all of those tools have been at our disposal, and they have not generated enough money, so we're told, to be able to make the investments that are necessary. So the question is, what if you could make an investment in something that will grow in the future, and you know it's going to grow in the future, and you feel very confident, and actually you have good data, maybe, that it's going to grow in the future. You could say, look, I'll actually make the bet now, and we can borrow money against what I know it's going to grow to in the future, right? So I need money now, but I ain't got it. Okay, so how do I get it? Well, I can borrow it from the future of what I think I will have, and I'll be able to put that into investments today. That inherently is tax, right? Is the fundamental, both data-driven belief that property taxes will increase from investments I make today, that they will increase enough that I could borrow against that now. That's the question of whether that is a useful tool for us to actually solve some of the City of Atlanta's greatest challenges. So tax allocation districts, which in other cities are sometimes referred to as TIFs, which are tax increment financing. But tax allocation districts is much cuter. So TADs and TIFs are the same thing. So if you hear those two words, they're interchangeable, okay? But they are those public financing tools, meaning things that pay for public things, that cities will use to pay for a development in a very particular area, and they do it by using money from anticipated property tax increases in the future. So the reason these TADs exist is so that governments have this tool. If we don't got the money, if we don't have the ability to raise it elsewhere, if there aren't federal grants coming in, or there are cuts that are being experienced, then we can actually use this tool to make multi-million, and in this case, potentially multi-billion-dollar investments. In addition to what they believe is that by making it, the property value goes up. Inherently, that means the property tax will go up. I'll get into that in a second. But the other argument, which isn't always centered, it's usually just brought up as a nice to have, which I think we're now reversing the conversation, is that in addition to increasing property value, it will attract future investments. Like people will want to spend money there, they'll want to buy things there. It will also create jobs. It will also increase the tax base without increasing taxes. I'll repeat that. It will increase the tax base without increasing taxes. So the argument is look, one way to get that money is just increase your taxes. You're paying me, $10,000 now. Why don't you pay me $15,000, and I can get some of this stuff done. If I don't want to do that, and that would suck for a lot of us, at least for me, I wouldn't like that. But if we were to do that, then if we're not doing that, then where's the money going to come from to pay for the things? That's inherently the core challenge question that exists here. So let's talk about property taxes. Okay? Property taxes actually make up a significant portion of that general fund that I talked about. So we talked about where money goes, but a lot of the way money comes in is through property taxes. And so you can see in the city of Atlanta, about 40%, you got Fulton County, 86%, Atlanta Public Schools, 78%. So property taxes actually fuels a lot. So if property taxes don't go up, or we don't have more money coming in from those property taxes, these are the three governmental entities that are most impacted and affected by those decisions. You with me so far? Cool. So to make this clear, because it gets said a little funny sometimes, the increase of property value inherently leads to the increase of property tax. So if someone says, we're not going to increase your taxes, right? But don't worry, this is not going to increase your taxes. When a property value goes up, the tax goes up, and I'll show you how that formula works and how you can mitigate against that. So a property value, let's just say a property is worth $100, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Maybe back in the day when there were horses and streetcars. Property value is calculated by two things happening to it, right? So whatever the property value is, so say your house is worth, X number of dollars, worth $100, and the county creates what's called a millage rate. Again, some of you know this, but for those who don't, right? A millage rate is just the rate that they're going to use to determine what your property tax calculation should be. So it would be like point something, right? So let's just say for the sake of this argument, it's 0.2, right? So 20% of $100 is what? Thank you. Oh, this is great. $20, right? So you would owe $20 in tax. Now you might say, okay, I'm a senior, I'm on fixed income, I'm not able to afford it, or I've been in this neighborhood, I'm a legacy resident, I haven't been here. That's why we create these exemptions. So these exemptions would say, look, you can actually apply for a $10 exemption, and then your tax base you would only owe $10 of tax on your $100 instead of owing the $20 you would based on the millage rate. So you'll hear this argument all the time. In Fulton County, they'll be arguing whether we should increase the millage rate or not. And that's just saying, should we increase the number that we are multiplying property value against? Should we increase that number in order to generate more dollars? And the argument is for those people who can't pay more tax, we'll create an exemption to make sure that they are protected against it. But there's only so much of that you can do. So property value inherently, if that number goes up, if that number goes from 100 to 150, the property tax will inherently go up unless the exemption offsets it, which is rare. Does that make sense? Yes. Does everyone understand that? Okay, cool, good. So how do we create a TAD then, right? So basically, if the goal of a TAD is increase property value, which will ultimately increase future tax, then the question is what is this thing? So in the 90s, what people allowed, what the state government allowed the city to do is to actually create what are called tax allocation districts. This is why I think it actually is a slightly better name, because it's kind of like they create a district. The first thing that they do is they look at an area that has not received the investment that it needs, and they draw a boundary. The city draws a boundary around it. And that boundary, once it's drawn, is fixed. This is important for later. You can't be like, is this boundary, but also like, if you know somebody at the door, you can get in. That's not how that works. It's a boundary. That boundary is strict, and that boundary is set. And what they do is once they say, okay, this boundary, so think pre-Beltline getting built, or an area that just deserves more investment, Campbellton Road, whatever it might be. You draw the boundary and say, this area has not received the investment that it needs. Once you draw that boundary, the second thing you do is you say, okay, so what's the property tax today, right? What's that property tax today? Whatever that number is, which is basically take all the property taxes, combine them into a number, that's the number. That number is now called base value, okay? So you drew the lines, you said, this is how much property tax is coming from there now. You now call that base value, okay? This base value is going to be really important for this calculation, okay? Because then, now this is a tax allocation district. So, great, we're in the tax allocation district. The base value, let's just say you collect all the properties, it's $100, right? All right, $100 is the base value of this. But then, you've now borrowed money from someone who said, I believe that you making investments in this area will lead to more money in the future. So you have that money, you start making investments, and then you start to see property values start to go up. That when taxes are distributed to those governments, over time, the base value still goes to each of those respective governments. Whatever that $100, everyone still gets their cut of $100. But let's say property value went up and now everything is worth $120. That $20 gets put into an account, essentially, right? And that increment, that $20 increment, is used, it has to be used for the period of time that TAD is open. It has to be used for future investment or paying back that debt. So you would use that $20 to pay back the debt or to continue making more investment. Got it? So it looks like this. So if you look at value before there's a TAD, it's right there on the left, the like box that's right there. And just imagine if there were no TADs. The reason why we have a dotted line that's going up is because of natural inflation and market value does increasingly go up. It's incremental. It's not enough, but it is steadily going up. That's what that dotted line says. And that basically that's what your base property value plus an increment would go. And so if that $20 was not going into an account, that would mean the schools would get more money, the county would get more money, and the city would get more money. But in this scenario, nobody gets more money than that base. That extra funding, which is that increment, goes there. And the argument is that that investment is going to lead to that, right? And then when everything is done, it gets cut off, then you're going to be living in this world where tax value is so high that you can use that tax value in perpetuity, and the argument is you would have never had that, so you better be grateful, right? So like you would have never had it, those investments created it for you, and so now thank you tax, right? But one thing that's really important, in the structure of a TAD, in the idea of a TAD, TADs are not intended to exist in perpetuity. They are not supposed to have an unlimited lifeline. It is supposed to be a quick injection that allows a really good growth, but then it's supposed to teeter off and maintain. It's like if you're at the gym, right? Okay, first 2 months you feel good, you look good, you drop but then you got to maintain, right? You got to be able to take care. You got to be able to take care of that, and you can't expect the same things that worked in month 1 and 2 to necessarily work in month 3 and 4, right? So, sometimes it never works, is what my experience has been. So, but if you look at it, the tax allocation districts are supposed to expire. The average range, what it's supposed to last for, is about 25 years. The idea is over the course of 25 years, which is not, some of y'all are not 25 years old. 25 years is enough time that would give you the generation that you need. And that would mean that when the TAD expires, that money that was increased would end up going, a lot more money would go back to folks. But the thing is, you're not just increasing your tax, because I just said, so say it went from $100 and then it went to $120, so now you got $20 extra to play with. But what cities can do is they can borrow money in what they think that increase is going to be 25 years from now. So I might say that I believe that if the base value is $100 now, and over year 1 it'll go up by $20, year 2 it'll go up by $40, so on and so forth. That I believe that in 25 years the value of the incremental value is actually going to be additional $500, I can actually borrow against that $500 that I anticipate getting later. I can take out a loan. It's kind of like a little credit card, some stuff, right? You can get money now. It hits your bank account, so that $500 would hit my bank account now, and I would be able to make payments every single month against this huge chunk of credit I just got to make investments in the neighborhood I'm in, right? That's what a lot of TADs are used for. Again, you could do pay as you go, but the reason we're having this conversation is because of the idea of being able to borrow future money to be able to use it today. This is really about, do you trust your friend with your credit card, right? So, there are a number of TADs. There are a number of TADs that are here. So y'all probably saw this on, if you're at this event, so you hopefully you've looked at this, but there's these eight active TADs. You got the West Side TAD, you got Perry Bolton, you got Eastside, Beltline, Campbellton Road, Hallwell, MLK, Metropolitan, and the Stadium neighborhoods, right? Each of these TADs, they were created as early as 1992, which is when we created the West Side TAD, and they have an expiration date. Some of them are set to expire in 2030. There are some that are expected to expire by 2050, right? So they're different based on how long they were, what the plan was, etc. And according to the city, they have been doing a lot of reporting on this and putting out some data on this. According to the city, the amount of money that has come from those TADs, those 8 TADs so far, has generated about $904 million. Now that could be a mix of tax increase, but it could also be money that was borrowed, like a couple $100 million was borrowed for the Beltline. So that's also included in that. So you take all that money together, and you're able to say, this is how much we were able to actually, this is our TAD financing. This is the amount of money that we put in up front. And what they're saying is, because we were able to do that, that has led to almost $12 billion in public and private investment. So that there's a 12 to 1. We put in $1, other people are like, I'm gonna put in 12. Now, how that $12 billion calculation came from, and what of it is direct or indirect or vibes versus actually in pocket, I think is something that is good data that I believe the city of Atlanta should produce, so that we can see more line by line when we come up with that number, what does it mean, so we can determine what of this is actualized, what of this is conjecture, and what of it is happenstance. Meaning maybe somebody was like, yeah, of course I put money into there, my grandma lives there, right? Versus I put money in there because it's an economic development opportunity for the area. Differentiating between that helps us understand behavior patterns and what's working and what's not a lot better. And some challenges that exist with this model is that, one, property values are not guaranteed to increase. So I told you, we believe they will increase. And there's good reason for that, right? Like if you do put an investment in a neighborhood or a community, property values may increase. It may also do a lot of other things. But the property value may increase, but it doesn't always increase. And we will show you that on a map. Not in every corridor has property value consistently just skyrocketed. The other thing is that right now, these public institutions, the city, the schools, the counties, they need public dollars more than ever. Let's just if you look at federal budget cuts that have come in, right? Credit to the city on this. Federal budget cuts that have come in that are stripping away programs at the city level, at the municipal level. They have to figure out, how are we going to be able to pay for those programs that once were guaranteed and now we may not have. In addition to that, we're about to host a bunch of people inside of this city, and we're going to need a lot of money to be able to do that. And on top of that, last year, the city of Atlanta had tens of millions of dollars in overspending that happened that they had to actually adjust for. So we have to have the conversation on, cities actually do really need money right now. And so in a time like now, is it the right time to be diverting future tax? The answer might be yes, because that would allow us to make investments that would relieve pressure from the city, county, and school board. Or it might be no, we should let those tax dollars go directly to those institutions. It's not for me to decide, but it's for you to actually weigh. The other thing is that just because you had a investment in a particular neighborhood does not mean that their costs didn't increase. We've talked about the revenue, but we haven't talked about the costs, meaning the increase of costs on public services. So if an area has a lot more people in it now, that means there's probably more need for public services that have to be sent out for folks. More use of firefighters, more use of officers, more use of any sort of public service that you could think of. Sidewalks will not last as long as maybe they were before, right? There's a lot of need that increases when we make investments in these things as well, and we need to be able to have calculation on what are the new unexpected costs that are directly related to these renewed investments. So when we talked about the TAD increase, right? You can see that, and we don't, the data is not available before 2008, which is another thing that I think we need to see. When the TADs were created in 1992, what actually happened, but somehow those are not available. So the important thing that's here is that when Usher dropped Yeah, we started to see really great things happen, right? So, but what you'll see, what I want you to think about here is the volatility that exists, because in some years, the blue, which is the increment on top of the base rate, so remember we talked about base, we talked about increment, and the increment hasn't always been high. So sometimes it dips, then it has a recovery. Sometimes it dips, sometimes then it has a recovery. So it is important for you to be able to look at that over time. And not all TADs are created equal, because some TADs are actually generating a ton of new dollars, right? So if you look at the one on the left, which one do you think that is? The Beltline TAD. The Beltline TAD, obviously investments on the Beltline, the area that before the Beltline was the Beltline, the area that was there, the things we told people was going to happen there, and the money that was put in there has absolutely increased the tax base there. It absolutely has increased property value there. So that number is really, really high, because the investments that were made there are also really, really high. But if you look at if you look at on the right, Hollowell, MLK, and Metropolitan, you could barely see that from back there, right? And I don't have to tell you how these neighborhoods and communities are divided on race, are divided on class, are divided on prioritization. That is not new for Atlanta. That is a part of Atlanta's identity, is investments have always been made and prioritized on the left side, but not necessarily on the right side. And that's part of the question was that a choice? Is there the opportunity to change that? Is there an opportunity to reprioritize? And how successful could that be, and how long would that take? I'm going to go back to that. We'll go there. It's fine. We'll go there. We'll go there. So, the core question, and I don't know if it's hot in here or this topic is awesome. So, perfect. Great. Awesome. I told you, civicatlanta.org/donate. You can go there. It's great. Honestly, there's so many more people than we thought were going to come to this. We thought there were going to be like 70 y'all. So thank you, and we can maybe open the door in a second to let someone in. But I was just like, I haven't done this in a while. So let's. The core question we are trying to answer today is one that TADS has injected itself into, was not a part of, but has injected itself into. And I want to say, I think this is a good thing. It is a good thing that we are having this conversation, because it is the right question to ask. How do we solve Atlanta's continuously stubborn and widening inequality? The entire reason the Center for Civic Innovation exists is because we asked this question 12 years ago. And every time we would ask this question, we were either told to not talk about it, or the data doesn't actually suggest that, or it's not real. And now, what I will say is that this administration has accepted the fact that Atlanta's inequality exists. And believe it or not, that is a very big step. And I commend them for that. I think from here the question is how do we solve it? And we can get into left and right on what makes sense or what doesn't. The question should be for all of us. Take your politics, put it to the side. Inequality is a moral imperative for us to solve. So the question, regardless of what you think about who and that person, we have to solve this issue. And so the reason why I think this conversation is super interesting and is relevant for CCI is the question becomes, do TADs as a vehicle, are they going to help us solve inequality, or do they have the potential to worsen inequality? And I will tell you right now, we do not know the answer to this question. If you think you know the answer to this question, because I can already see it in your eyes, some of y'all are already, I mean, we would have to add another row in the back for your eyes, some of y'all, but like, I got it. You may already assume, but the truth is we do not have good data on, there's not an audit, has not been released yet. Most recent audit has not been released yet on whether this has been effective or not, right? We have indicators, we have anecdotal information, like somebody said a thing, but we actually need to do deeper analysis on what is working and what is not. That is the most sober way for us to actually address this head on. And so when we're asking this question, I think it's important for us to think about, and then I'll open it up for questions, and I'm gonna bring Johnny and Allison up to just ground us in how this is actually affecting people head on. Is this helpful? Sorry if I'm like going deep into, okay, good. I realize we're talking a lot, and again, it's hot. Tips. They call it that in Chicago. They also call that pizza, so I don't know. Okay, yeah, okay, great, cool, great. Whatever it is, you're wrong. That one, I won't take the political stance on this, but in all seriousness, in Chicago, they created TIFs in the 1990s, right? So similar timeline to us, and we have 8 TIFs, or TADs. They had, at one point, upward of 130 TIFs. 130 drawn areas where they wanted to make investments. It was a tool that they were certain, they were certain is going to help solve inequality in Chicago, right? And another important point is that 20 to 30% of the tax base actually existed in those TADs. In Georgia, you cannot have, you take all the TADs, you combine them together, you cannot have more than 10% of your tax base inside of those TADs. We're already at risk of violating that, right? That's just data. But you cannot, by state law, have more than 10% of your tax base inside of those areas. In Chicago, they clearly didn't have that rule. 25 to 30% was inside of their tax allocation, or their TIFs. And they used it to build things like the Loop, Millennium Park, things, right? They were like, oh, it's gonna be great, we're gonna do great things. And we were combing through some of the analysis that has come out. They've done a lot of postmortem on this. And they said, look, there is no question that the amount of things that we built, how we built them, and how prepared we were for like big events, big games, big opportunities, economic opportunities, no question, we would have never been able to build any of that at the speed at which we did it without having this finance tool. The other thing they said was that there are a lot of companies that they believed were going to leave Chicago, that they were able to retain because they were able to make investments that those companies required. The other thing they said was they were able to maintain local control of these dollars, which is something that they really struggled with often because the state or the federal government often would dangle money that came with a lot of strings, but TAD money and TIF money gives you a lot more local control. You get to determine how you're going to do it under some confines there. And then it prevented some of the necessary tax increase that may have happened. That's the analysis that they've had. Let's move to the cons. The school system has spoken out time and time and time again in Chicago that they faced funding pressures because of the TIFs that were insurmountable for them to be able to provide high quality education to the young people already there. The other thing that was brought up was subsidizing of already strong markets. So think about, I don't know that we need to disagree on this, but the Beltline's doing decent, I think. We agreed on that, right? Maybe you think it's a underdeveloped area, I don't know. But similar to them, they were like, we had some area, like downtown for Chicago, and a few other areas had such huge investments, their map looked very similar, right? Huge investments in some areas, but in some areas, those investments were not even close to as large. They weren't able to see that increase. The other two things that they brought up that I thought was so fascinating was they talked about the process by which communities were brought into being able to help determine where investments were made. Because I think we can all agree that we should be investing in neighborhoods and communities that matter. Like, there's no disagreement here on that. But who gets to decide what those investments are? What does that look like? So they created a task force. The task force was helping them to be able to, and it was made up of a lot of corporate leaders, it was made up of a lot, I'm talking about Chicago, it was made up of a lot of folks who didn't necessarily represent the community, and the community organizations were like, can I please get a little bit of understanding on how that's happening? And they were like, maybe. So that was a huge part of the takeaway there, was that community engagement and transparency. There was supposed to be a dashboard that showed the spending that was supposed to be published on a regular basis. That was never created in Chicago. And the last thing was racial and geographic inequity. This is a sad way to frame this, but sometimes you have to laugh now, cry later, which is like, the easiest way to solve inequality is to push it out, right? A lot of cities, this is what they do. They say, you know what? This is San Francisco's story. This is all those other cities. Like, trust me, I love Atlanta, right? Like, this is a love language for me. But other cities who have also claimed to love their people had no problem displacing the black and brown folks out of those cities and then saying they solved inequality. And that is an actual policy play, which is, okay, I'm sorry you can't live here, you can't live here anymore. Sorry, I'm still getting back to professional language. They're like, I'm sorry you can't live here anymore, but you can live in a neighborhood down there, and we promise we're gonna build some transportation to get you into the city. We promise you, don't worry, I know you can't live here anymore, but we're gonna create jobs. The jobs we create here are gonna have a rippling effect on jobs that are created there. I know you can't live here anymore, but when you come in, we're gonna fight for your wages to go up with the corporations and the companies that are here, and we're gonna tax properties accordingly and give them a head tax for taking up so much public resource. All of this is important because in Atlanta, those cities don't claim to be the city that is investing in black neighborhoods. In some ways, they almost unapologetically just did it and said, that's what happens. Now, I happen to genuinely believe that this city says and believes that they want to make investments in the neighborhoods that have often been left out, sliced up, displaced, pushed out. It's why I think we have to have a very critical conversation on whether this is the approach to do it. It might be. And if it is, I want all the information to know why it is. If it's not, what are our other options? But we do need to look at case studies around the country, because this was just published not too long ago, that billions of dollars sat in TIF accounts while schools had to make cuts and shut down. Does that sound familiar? Yes. So billions of dollars sat in accounts, and we were shutting down schools. This was Chicago, right? So I think this is important because they actually got so much pressure after this that they had to create a mechanism that they would relieve, it was called TAD surplus. They would take the surplus from the TADs and they would redistribute that out because they were making too much money in some neighborhoods from some of this development. And this just came out in 2023. This was a report that I'm referencing, so you can take a look at this. It's called Redevelopment for Whom, which I think it's supposed to be whom, but you know, Chicago. But we'll want to make sure that like you're able to look at case studies around the country on things. You know, our friends at the Partnership for Southern Equity published data on the fact that, you know, TADs actually have led to poor communities subsidizing their own displacement. And I just, damn, right? I think that, you know, the other thing, the criticism that was there was that it diverted public funds from essential services because the demand for those services were increasing there, right? Again, I'm not making a case one way or another. I'm saying that there is analysis and data that we have, and there's information that we don't have, and we need to be able to look at those things and have a real conversation about it. This is important too, which is that the school system has spoken out on this. The CFO of the Atlanta Public School System actually gave a presentation. And by the way, we've been covering TADs. If you don't follow CCI on Instagram, are we on TikTok yet? No? Okay, all right. Well, you can follow us. You can, yeah, that's embarrassing, I'm so sorry. So make sure that you're following us on that because every week we publish you know, policies that have been determined at the city, county, and state level, and like things that people are discussing. So we've been talking about TADs for a while, but we also covered this a long time ago, which is that the Atlanta Public School System actually said that they lost $2 billion in revenue from the TAD. They would actually lose $2 billion if the TADs expired where they are today. So they would lose $2 billion based on the current you know, projections and investments that are being made. It would create a $2 billion tax deficit for our school system. And then I think that this administration and the commission that has been here has actually been a little bit more forthcoming with what it is that they want to invest in. So they've at least provided, you know, concepts of a plan. Though, like, it is a, you know, from transit networks to trails and green spaces to affordable housing, health centers, small business, and public infrastructure. As you can imagine, these like things are still very big, so it's not fully clear what is actually underneath each of one of these things. But there is a, hey, we want to put $2 billion into transit networks. What does that mean? That's what we have to have a conversation about, right? Because what we know in this city, transit networks, what it means to one person is not the same thing as what it means to another person. Same thing with health centers, grocery stores, small business growth, etc. But the administration did say that they would be able to secure $5.5 billion at minimum in the future to be able to fund these types of activities. So keep in mind, so what you would do is you would borrow money from the future and say, I'm going to borrow that money and I'm going to invest it in these things now, and it's going to produce that $5.5 billion later. It's going to produce it. And let's just, and with this part is, so what's the alternative, right? And I think this is actually the most compelling part of the conversation that I think is an important part that we have to have, which is, if not TADs, then what? If not TADs, then where is that money coming from to make those investments? And I think this is where we have to have an alternate response. If you are not in favor of moving TADs forward, then the question is what is the alternative response? And I think that the question then becomes, if you're not willing to extend them, what's the alternative response? Because these things are going to need investment, but they're not going to grow on trees. It's not going to come out of nowhere. So if that is a question, then where else can it come from? So the reality is that if we don't invest, if we don't expand TADs, there will be less money, no matter what, right? Because that will have more money, this will have less money. There will be less money to invest in programs and services. you could, depending on what the decisions are made, some TADs may get extended, some may not. It could lead to an increase in property tax. Actually, almost every political person that you talk to, any elected official will tell you that property taxes are all but inevitable to increase. It could lead to cuts in budgets. Particularly, we know that the community services are the first things to get the cuts. And so that's really important for us to keep in mind. But also, another conversation that has happened here is whether it will prompt appropriate commercial property and tax assessments to make sure that, whether there will actually be an assessment of what are we losing already in addition to what could be gained. So I think, again, I really want to frame this conversation as you can't just be against the TADs and you can't just be for the TADs. You gotta be for community and investing in those communities. And the question is what role do TADs play in getting us there, given both their opportunity, but also given their limitations? Fair enough? Is that a fair overview? Okay. Are there any general questions aside from what can a TAD fund or not fund before I bring up, and Allison, Johnny, you can come up, but any general questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one, thank you for simplifying it because tax can get very confusing, and I'm in college. I'm in economic development policy, and I'm still confused. But my question is, kind of how you said we can't be only for it and we can't be only against it as well. So when thinking about TADs and how it inevitably creates like gentrification, displacement, and all the things, what could be done to ensure that, because like you said, property values inherently usually increase over time, which increases property taxes. So instead of, the people, they can't afford the property taxes no longer, what would be, I guess, a solution in a sense, or I guess a policy idea that can ensure displacement doesn't happen? Because property taxes will increase, and I'm assuming, like, I'm answering my own question. It could be like just raising the minimum wage and the cost, or like the amount of money people are able to receive. But what would you say?
Yeah,
That's a lot. I know.
yeah, wrong forum. The truth of the matter is the easiest way to push up against millage rate is exemption. So you can create exemptions for seniors, for example, because seniors might be on a fixed income. And the city has done this, right? Where there's areas where there might be property increase, there are opportunities for us to either cap people's property tax increase or to help pay the difference between what they were paying and what they're not. That is one way of doing it. So it's exemption, actual policy that protects property tax increases for particular communities. I would say it's not that it's inevitable. It is that the way we have used the tool to date has demonstrably done that. However, there are ways for us to make sure that we create protections for communities, which is where public policy comes in. And I won't get too in the weeds on that, but you do have some elected officials in the room here, other people who may have some ideas on actual policies that they would be willing to introduce to actually create those protections and put them in place. It's the other reason why people are like, let's put those protections in place now, ahead of any decisions being made, so that we can be certain. Let's just say you fully believe that everything that everyone is saying right now is the truth. But they are not going to be elected forever. So 20 years from now, you're going to have a new mayor, you're going to have a new council, you're going to have a new school board, you're going to have a new commission. Are they going to be bought into the same thing that's being said today? Are they going to be bought into that? Part of creating those protections is preventing up against that.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Yes. Go. Yes.
So what does the TAD legislation actually say? Like, I understand that foreign institution money based on projected tax revenue, but does that legislation
Kyle's gonna come up in a little bit when he talks about what you can and can't use. I'll make sure, can you make sure to answer that question? Okay, yeah, okay, he's got you there. Yep. Yes, go ahead.
What's the mechanism behind school districts losing money with TADs? Because as I understand it, it increases property value, which should, in theory, increase the amount of money the school districts get.
So I think it's because if you look at where, I don't know which slide it was. So basically, if school systems themselves, right, are not actually gaining or actualizing the value. So the tax allocation district starts, right? Say I was getting $100.
Sure.
Year 10 of the tax allocation district, I'm still only getting $100. So that doesn't mean my costs haven't gone up. That doesn't mean that the demand for my services haven't gone up. That doesn't mean that I don't have more things that my budget hasn't gone up. And for city, county, and schools, budgets have gone up, right? So that budget going up and me only being able to access the base value tax prevents me from being able to use the tax base as a way to cover those increases in costs.
I'm unsure what you mean by base value and added number.
Okay, come see me afterward and I can show, I'll go back to the map. Yeah, it's the base value, which is the value that was frozen at the beginning of the tax allocation. Yes?
Do we now have excess money from our tax, and if so, where's that money allocated?
Kyle, do we have excess money?
It depends upon the tab, but typically there is some money, some committed to future debt payment. So wanting to make sure in case that property value comes back down, that we're not able to pay back that debt. But we're in the Eastside tab right now. Every dollar, we can already pay off the debt. We haven't done it yet. So I think right now, it's something on the magnitude of $30 billion that is available for spending on any given year.
And you guys can pay that, you said?
We pay at the
You
CCI.
said Eastside.
So the geography we're in is the Eastside tab.
And you all what?
So the debt that we have to pay, we have enough money set aside to pay the debt off. So we're not concerned about not being able to pay the debt.
Okay.
So we have money to still be able to spend. A portion of that is already committed to Atlanta Public Schools. Back in 2019, they said, you've got your debt, future debt paid off. Can we start getting that money flowing back to us to address the concern that was just raised, or the thought that, hey, this is a lot of extra revenue. Teacher costs have gone up, bus fuel cost, everything's gone up. So they wanted to be able to go and capture some of that now. Even though the tab's not technically closed, money's flowing back to APS out of the Eastside tab. But that's unusual. And there are other government entities that don't have that money flowing back through pilot payments, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
We'll take just two more. No, go back. Yeah. Yes, go ahead. Oh, yeah, one go back. Okay, I'll take one on this side too. Go ahead, Amy.
I have so many questions.
Okay.
So I don't know where to start. Are we assuming that this increase that you showed in that first slide is going to continue? Is the success of this based on assuming that? And
Yes.
why, if you were for the TAD in the first place, why would you not be for extending it? Because you're starving people of income by keeping that base rate?
It's just that the schools, the city, and the county are not able to take that additional incremental increase.
So now
They
that
can't
things
use
have
that.
gotten more valuable, they're not benefiting.
They're not able to use it even though their costs may have gone up. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes.
Like, under whose discretion is the money that we get from the TAD's lending? Like who, is that done through the city council, or is that done through the mayor, or like, how does that work?
City council draws the lines, right? And they're the ones who are, but then Invest Atlanta has an actual commission that oversees a lot of where the spending is actually happening, where it's going. They're the ones who are often saying, you know, like, we were able to invest this many TAD dollars into this specific type of infrastructure. So that's where you have that. And then you have independent auditing as well that will look at the performance and the measurement of the success of the TADs accordingly. Okay. Get one last one to the back and then.
That's my question.
Okay, oh, sorry, right behind you, yes. And then I'm gonna, we'll have another opportunity for Q&A as well, so just wanted to get some
So-
additional.
I got your list, first of all, sorry about that.
Okay.
But my question is in regards to legacy owners, in regards to TADs, are there mechanisms that help to reduce the tax burden on those who already live in a TAD space that can't afford, I guess, increased property taxes that come with the increased property value because of the development that goes on in places?
That's where those exemptions come in. That's where, like, you know, the city can create programs to be able to do, you know, senior, like for demographic, certain demographics, it could say, look, we're gonna cap it here. So the city council has the power to be able to.
And then my follow-up question to that is, what mechanisms are in place to help people understand their protections, but don't get graded upon by like, corporate owners who really want to
The
buy-
perfect actual transition to Housing Justice League. And so I'm gonna hand it over to y'all. I'm loud enough and I'll stand near you. I know we're trying to get it in the mic as well, but I want to give these two folks an opportunity to just kind of quickly talk about their work on the east side and where they see the greatest opportunity for need and investment. Again, this is about investing in communities. This is not just a discussion about TADs. So I wanted to start off with you, Allison, to tell us a little bit about the work, like what you're seeing on the east side and what challenges you're seeing people face and what Housing Justice League does to kind of address that head on.
Yeah, so I just want to go back, like historically, I live in a community, I've been a part of the Peoplestown community all of my life. And this is a community that was decimated by the foreclosure crisis. And so moving forward with that, even with that, we understood that to be a time and a space to try to regroup, teach our communities, particularly those who were homeowners or those who were having those insecurities of losing their homes, about how to protect what they had left. But then came the belt line in between the foreclosure crisis. And so our community was just decimated. We are in the south side, we are in the overlay district of the Beltline. I think that what we have seen is an atrocity, particularly to people who have been in these communities historically because they were placed there by really bad historical housing policies, all the way from redlining, model cities, the encroachment of improvement. And so what we see, particularly I want to just go back when we did our research report, Beltlining for All Broken Promises. If you haven't seen it, go to our website. And it's a report that we did. It was an on-the-ground report where we talked to neighbors who were being threatened with evictions, neighbors who were being threatened by losing their homes, and again, by those who were coming in and just the predatory of it all. And we had these conversations, we were trying to have a conversation about the Beltline and its mechanism of gentrification and displacement. But we were shooed off by the Beltline Inc. That this wasn't gonna happen. And indeed, in real time, what has happened is we have lost over 60% of our legacy homeowners in this area. And this area goes, we're talking about the geographical area from Peoplestown all the way to the West End. And so it has been a really hard time of trying to really infuse the things that are going to keep folks in our communities. Again, like Rohit mentioned, when we have these social coercions, social issues that are plaguing our communities that other people see as detrimental to our community. And we see these investments, but they're not being invested into families and people. What we see is people are running for safety. And what they usually end up doing is running into more issues and more problems. And so we also have issues when it comes to our economic stability. When our neighbors don't have the income at their disposal, our small businesses hurt. When our teachers don't have the materials they need, our school system hurts, our children hurt. We have nowhere to put our kids when these issues happen. Because the new folks and folks that have come in and gentrified, their kids don't go to public schools. And so there's an inequity, heavy inequity in that piece. And then we also see where our public safety comes into play. Our communities become over-policed. Right now, they're over-policed. Our crime rates in some of the areas are up, regardless of what they're saying. They are up. And they are up because more people are getting arrested for those small minutia crimes. But I do want to try to be positive here a little bit. What we've been able to do in Housing Justice League, and particularly with that report and those findings, is to have those important conversations with the Beltline and talk about the need for investments in these communities. And if we don't protect the people that are there, you already see the changes that have happened. We're going to continue to see those changes happen at a greater amount, greater scale. And the other thing, the last thing I'll land here, is that what we find is just appalling, is that if you can't afford to live in your community where you are definitely not going to be a part of the Atlanta family any longer, regardless of how long your parents have worked. And I'm speaking from my own lived experience. Regardless of how long my parents worked, how hard they worked, city employee, to have a home, now we can't afford the taxes, now you have to go. So, yeah, we're going to continue to work on some stricter, work with our council people about policies to protect people.
Thank you, Allison. John, can you tell us, as a business owner, a longtime business owner in this area, kind of what are some of the challenges and changes that you've seen that you think should be driving the way that we're thinking about investing in communities like this?
You know, I think I agree with you. When it comes to challenges, one of the biggest challenges is that, and this is my opinion, I think I see the city year after year invest less in people in communities and more in what people from outside want to do. You know, if you have enough money to donate to enough campaigns, then you get access. And access is a privilege. And once you get that, you seem to get more of what you want and not necessarily what we need. And so what I see around here is there's not a lot of people who live on and around Edgewood Avenue, not anymore. But when we first opened, my bar, by the way, is Joystick. I'm a bar owner, so I live in sin, thank you. And when we first opened, almost every employee we had lived within walking distance or in cycling distance. And now the vast majority of them have to drive because it's too expensive here. I know what people are paying in rents, you know, because we're in the Beltline Overlay District. I also have a complicated relationship with the Beltline. You know, like, look, when people come from out of town, I also take them there. Look at this, let's all walk. Let's go drive somewhere to walk. But it's impacted us in a negative way because the things we have requested over the years, you know, we've gone to city council meetings, we've gone to MPU meetings, we've been a part of the business association, we've done all those things that we were supposed to do. You know, give us better sidewalks. You know, when I see someone who's lived in the neighborhood for 50 years in a wheelchair and they have to take the bike lane because the sidewalks are not fixed, I have a problem with that. And I know that in theory, like the property owner is supposed to take care of that, which makes no sense to me. But give us a loading area. Do we have the money? Can the city give us enough money? Can y'all go through and do a loading area so we don't block the bike lanes? Can we improve lighting? Can we maybe make it look a little better? When I think about the money, and believe me, I am not rich at all. I am. It is hard to run a bar on Edgewood Avenue. But I know how much money we've paid in taxes and excise tax alone since we opened. We've been open for about 14 years, and average of $2,000 a month on that. So we're talking about well over 300,000. I'd like to see that go to something that helps people here. Because the people here are the people we serve as a bar. You know, we're a third spot for many people. Yeah, I'm gonna ramble if I do that because I'm angry about all of it.
The last two questions, and then we'll move to the last part of today. Is just if you were to, if you were on a task force that was responsible for making investments in this neighborhood, in this community, on this side of town, where would you tell city leadership to prioritize. If it was like, look, we genuinely want to make investments in things that matter, that would help you, help your peers, help your community and your neighborhood, what are like one or two things that come to mind that you would want at the top of the list?
I think affordable housing. We survive on people coming in, right? If you can afford to live here, then you can afford to go and get a drink. If you can't afford to live here, you're gonna have to go drink at your house, right? And the more people we have, there's just more income. There's more life. You get a feeling of and the sense of community. And then you have more people walking. You have people who are interested in parks. You then create that environment that the city keeps saying we want to be. We are a city. We need to behave and look like a city. So I think going through and making it easier for small businesses to start. It can take you 3 to 4 months to get a liquor license in the city of Atlanta. And if you're a big giant developer with deep pockets, that's nothing. But you can't even apply for it until you have signed a lease, which means you're already paying rent. Well, some people can afford that. We can't. The local people can't do that. I think that's important. I think creating the infrastructure so that you can move from one part of town to another part of town without a vehicle. I think the entire process of working anything through City Hall and having it go through quickly and easily, I think making sure that we're staffed in a way. There's one person in the fire department who does life safety inspections on planning. That's from Buckhead to the airport. Cobb County has 8. The city of Atlanta has 1. So is it not worth paying someone 80, 90, 100? I don't know how much they get paid, but can we not pay them to expedite that? So I think we have to reassess, and what I'd love to see the city do is to stop listening to those outside voices and coming up with things here in the city. And I think you can do that through real basic, simple things like let's have more trash cans. If you don't want your city to look dirty, let's put more trash cans out. There are a lot of real small things, but I would say we start with whatever works best locally.
Elson, how about you? If you were to be on a task force driving investments, where would you want the city to prioritize?
I definitely would want the city to prioritize not affordable housing, but housing for poor folks. And also housing for people who are unsheltered and homeless.
Can you explain to people like how to, I think emotionally I can understand that distinction. What does that look like in practice?
Well, what it looks like in practice is be real intentional about how we share our developments, and they shouldn't all be concentrated in just along the belt line. They should be in areas where people have easy access, access to their jobs, to their health care, still connected to their networks. It also looks like that the people that are in communities also have a say in where the development is and how the development works. And it also means that you are incorporating and implementing ideas from these institutions that once helped contribute to the housing stock, the affordable housing stock in Atlanta, like the community development corporations and those making the reinvestments in those types of institutions that have demonstrated how to do deep affordable housing and how to do it well and for a long period of time.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would it would be great if we could open up our housing when it comes to the Atlanta Housing Authority, right? They have an entire stock of inventory of housing that can be opened up to make it easier. It'd be great if the city could figure out a way to not allow a giant corporation to buy multiple lots all at one time, that push out people who maybe could afford a smaller place, that keeps it more local. I don't know how you do that, but there must be some sort of mechanism for that.
Can y'all join me in giving them a round of applause? Thank you for the work that both of them do. I'm going to hand it over to Clara for our last part of today.
Hey y'all. I'm gonna have Tanisha from our team be our scribe. Okay, so if the goal of TADS is to address social and economic inequality, let's think about what that means in practice. So you want to address social and economic inequality on the east side. Let's talk specifically about the east side. What are the things that you want your city, your county, and your schools to invest public dollars in? And I want you to just shout them out, and Tanisha's gonna write them, and we'll see how fast she writes. So what are things that you want your city, county, and schools to use public dollars for, to invest in, to address social and economic inequality on the east side? Oh, wow, I'm right behind. I heard bike lanes, someone said? Accessibility? Can you say more about what that means for you?
More or less simply not, having actually like, or more or less policy that actually is able to cover more people who aren't able to work at all.
So you said policies that cover more people that are not able to work at home, you said?
Not able to work at all.
At all. So, say that again? I'm gonna think about that as I'm moving, while I try to think of a word.
Service.
Social programming? Programs. What else do I have? Climate adaptation? Get that word down, adaptation, Tanisha. What else we got?
Workforce development.
Workforce development. Pedestrian paths. Somebody help Tanisha.
Educating kids well.
Educating kids well. What does that look like?
Not what we're doing.
Like give me an example of what does that mean? More teachers? Does that mean more funding for schools? Okay, so let's I'm more teachers, so I'm like, let's dig into that. So funding for teachers, more funding for schools, universal pre-K, write them separately just for the purpose of this. Universal pre-K. Oh, pre-K, thank you. We also had just more funding for schools. Tutoring. Did you say something?
Oh.
After school programming?
Resources for, and housing for unhoused folk and folks who need housing.
So, resources for unhoused folks. And I'll kind of separate those two because I think that affordable housing is overlaps, but it's also, those can be two separate things, right?
I like what Ms. Johnson said, housing,
I
not
was like,
just
who's Ms.
affordable
Johnson?
Housing for poor folks, not affordable housing.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
Yeah. So housing for like low to no income folks, yeah?
I'd say resources for access and really to remove those barriers that keep people out of housing.
Say that again, Allison?
Resources.
Like resources for, Clara, like resources for IDs and stuff. There's things that you need to get to be able to get housing that people don't have access
Yeah,
to.
people need to pay off those past evictions that.
Yeah.
And, expungement.
So I'm gonna break all those out. So, expungement services, ID support, you said one other thing. I'm tired.
Rent control.
Rent control, eviction support, diversion, senior programming.
As in senior citizen. Economic empowerment.
Oh, hi.
Places where parents could go and like do stuff when they drop their kid for a little bit, like drop in.
I know that you are also the child of a toddler. The dream that toddler parents think of all the time. Parent support, yeah, but like centers, right? Or like child care centers, right? That are affordable.
Yeah. Community-based violence intervention.
Community-based violent intervention. Yeah. Mental health resources. Water waste management. Do you remember that later? Flooding support, things to support flooding, food autonomy, you said? Give me a few more. Transit. What about transit? More buses, more trains. Transit.
Healthcare, jobs, and recreation.
To get them there, you're saying? Also, can we add healthcare to that?
And, more, money to our first responders.
More money to first responders, or this specific type of first responder?
Yeah, city,
Like police, fire, et cetera? Just.
We got.
I'm trying to pull it, because we know what the, yeah.
You get fired.
Okay, so the other types of first responders, so, yeah. which we often forget that there are so many other types of first responders other than police, yeah. So funding for firefighters and salaries, right? EMS.
Paying off that, like, a lot of them are private.
Yeah, so making sure that all EMS is public
Yeah.
and funded well, I assume, yeah. Give me 2 more. This side of the room is more quiet. Oh, okay, wait, the back is very quiet, yeah.
Affordable commercial space for small business with transparent leases.
Affordable commercial space for small businesses with transparent leases. I told Tanisha that y'all were gonna be calling out one word at a time, so. A business nursery is apparently what that's called. I've never heard that phrase. One more thing, yeah.
Accessible and inclusive living communities for adults with disabilities.
Yes.
Accessible. Accessible. And affordable.
And inclusive.
And inclusive. Living communities for folks with disabilities? Okay. All right, so at CCI, we are very lofty in our dreams often, and then Kyle Kessler over here comes in and crushes them. I'm just kidding. He loves me and I love him. So what Kyle's gonna do is he is going to use the red marker. Good educator. And he's gonna put a circle around the things that TADS can fund. And he's gonna put an X around the things that TADS cannot fund. And I know that, if you know Kyle, you also know there's like a side conversation to all of it. So some of these you might need a little clarity on, but we're just gonna go with what he's reading them as. Circle the things that TADS can fund and X out the things that TADS can't fund. So rent control. Senior support and fund, yeah, senior support.
We can't see the red one over here, so we.
Kyle, get more dramatic with that.
Is there anything you can
Universal 3K. Right here. Tutoring. Housing for unhoused folks. Okay, yeah, circle, all right.
After school programs.
Thank you, Tanisha, because I can't read it correctly.
Let's just work it.
Okay, that's smart.
Right.
See, Kyle has
Community-based
logic.
violence prevention.
So funding for schools,
More
Yeah.
funding for schools.
this is a combination circle and X. What's this?
Community-based violence prevention.
That's a part of the X. Cycling,
Like bike lanes, maybe?
infrastructure, you get a big circle. Social programs, that's an X. Resources for expungements, ID support, no. After-school programs and vendors, that's a no. Workforce development, likely a no. Senior support, what was the thought on senior support?
Senior citizen support.
But like,
Activities, services, activities, places to go. What should I say?
affordable commercial space. Depending, maybe, health facilities, that's a circle. Climate adaptation, probably a circle. Money for first responders, that's a no. Food, maybe we'll do a little bit on that. Accessible and affordable communities for people with disabilities, we do that. Business nursery, as described, I think that's like the affordable commercial space.
Yeah.
Maybe do a little X. Pedestrian path, that's a circle. Healthcare, big X. Parent support, affordable childcare, nope. Resources for
Dashed.
resources.
Correct.
I'm gonna exit for now. We'll talk about it in just a second. Transit, we're gonna circle it with a little X. So, is that everything?
Not have ordinance starter and stop.
So these are,
Thought it was great.
Was transit a circle or not?
it's mainly a circle, but want to talk? That's why we're talking about it, right? So what TADs can and can't fund. So taking this all the way back, Ro was mentioning back in the 1980s into the 1990s, Atlantans in Georgia for the first time could have these things called Tax Allocation Districts, called TIFs elsewhere across the country. So there's a state constitutional amendment that was adopted, which then allowed local jurisdictions to then vote to see if we wanted to allow the city council locally to create a TAD. Our first TAD was created in 1992. We've had a series of TADs since then, but the basics of what can and can't happen, how these things are financed, what the expenses can be spent on, is all laid out in state law. So this is just a clip of it here. But what you can do is first you have to have, it defines what redevelopment is. It's all about redevelopment. It's the Redevelopment Powers Law, which is what's quoted here. Defines redevelopment area, the geography that Roy talked about. There has to be a redevelopment plan. So there has to be some sort of guiding, it's not every day we just sort of think of what we want to do, but there has to be a guiding document that's also adopted by the council. And then a series of things that can be funded. Some of these things made it to your list, but not everything made it on the list. To get into a little bit more, the specific costs that can or can't be funded, this comes up to the financing question. So capital costs, straight up brick and mortar, you can pay for that. Financing costs, if you're issuing a bond, if you're paying interest, if you're paying the banks or the financiers, all that can be covered. Professional service costs, so architects, engineers, other design staff. Administrative costs, so we have Invest Atlanta that manages the TADs. Their costs related to the TAD work can be covered as well. Likewise for Beltline, Atlanta Beltline Inc. Relocation costs, so if folks are being displaced, not just because their landlord has chosen to go up on the rent, but you're trying to clear a blighted area, folks are living there, that can be covered with TAD fees as well. Organizational costs, so as you're doing the redevelopment plan, other related activities, that can be covered. Payments in lieu of taxes. We talked about that a little bit, that these local jurisdictions can choose to opt into the TADs. Anybody who chooses to participate can also negotiate some way to get some of their money out. I mentioned it after the Eastside after the Eastside TAD, all the money that was needed to pay off the debt was paid off. And as there was talk about extending the West Side TAD, potentially, to help further the Gulch redevelopment, Atlanta Public Schools renegotiated its sort of stance and said, we want to take our money back out of the Eastside TAD, but also chose to start participating in the corridor TADs. But they are not contributing everything to the corridor TADs. They're contributing part of that, and that increases over time. And then real estate assembly costs. So as you might need to buy some property to do this redevelopment, that can be covered as well. Now, what is not included, programmatic and operating costs. So most of the things that were X'd out over here are because they're programmatic and operating costs. And as was mentioned, there are some things that might cross that line. You can pay for the construction of the transit or for vehicles that are going to be in service long enough to be capital cost, but you're not going to pay for the bus driver, the train driver, maintenance crews, all that sort of thing. Likewise, you can pay for new school buildings, you can't pay for teachers, can't pay for janitorial staff, all that stuff. So that's sort of how it breaks down. And we'll get you all this information as well. So since we're here in the Eastside TAD, close to the Beltline, we are going to close out, but I just want to share a little bit of information with you. We'll get you a link to this map. This is from the Urban Displacement Project, showing areas that are transitioning. This is data, I think, up to 2018. That's the most recent information there is. But not all neighborhoods are created equal. Not every part of the city is going through the same sort of levels of change, which is part of why the mayor has his neighborhood reinvestment initiative, certain priorities trying to focus this attention on. We have these TAD boundaries also to try to address these things, but we will get you this information after the meeting. And then some of the things that have already been funded in the Eastside TAD and the Beltline TAD as well. This is not a total list. We will send you a link to Invest Atlanta's website, which has blow-by-blow sort of impact of the TADs that exist. But lots of stuff has been on affordable housing. For the Beltline, it's been about acquiring the property, the railroad right of way, building the parks, the trails to get there. And then most recently, some of the newer things in the Eastside TAD, not just in the Eastside TAD, have been to increase food access. So food can't pay for. A grocery store building and the equipment that goes into it, that can be covered. So two examples, one is just down here on Edgewood with Gooder, and then further down at 5 Points would be a zoning mark. So I think that's what we've got. Do you want to close this out, Rohit? Sure.
Well, we have 5 more minutes for Q&A, and then we will close out, and Kyle, I'll probably have you tag team on this. Yeah, like.
So I saw you skipped over the slide that mentioned the legislation.
Oh, that was an accident.
Okay, but I would love to talk about it, because that will obviously put a bit of a flash on the entire proposal to extend TADs.
So we'll release all that information to people who go to civicatlanta.org. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm going to have Kyle go through this piece to just give you some more information.
So as Rohit mentioned, state law currently says that you cannot create a new TAD if more than 10% of your total tax base of the city is in the geography of a TAD. What the state, and currently 17+% of the total tax base within the city is within a TAD. So that's why, as the conversation currently exists, although folks are interested in redrawing boundaries, doing other things, we cannot create a new TAD because of the state law that's existed since the 1980s. What the state legislature, Republican State Representative Chuck Martin has introduced is to clarify or to add language in that says the renewal or extension of a TAD beyond the deadline it's going to end now is like the creation of a new TAD. I believe Jim Martin would probably agree with that statement as well. But that's where the conversation is right now. So this has started to go through committees. It has not yet gotten to a vote, at least as far as I know earlier today. But if that's the case, then this proposal to extend the TADs to 2055, and as we showed before, the corridor TADs are currently going to 2050, so they would not get a 5-year extension. But something like the Beltline TAD, which currently is set to close in 2030, it would not get an extra 25 years of life if this legislation passes right now. It would have to close on the condition that it needs to pay off its debt. You can't close them until they're pay off their debt, but otherwise you couldn't just say we want to take advantage of this tool for another 25 years.
And what state laws usually don't go into effect till July 1, what if they use that deadline?
So the state can pass a law and say this goes into effect as soon as it happens.
As soon as it's signed.
They can stipulate what it is. Now the governor could choose to veto or whatever else, but they could say as soon as the governor signs it, this becomes law. Or they could set some other date. They could say, we'll let you do this sort of extension. They can't retroactively. But yeah, TADs also don't start or end until the end of the year either, because it's trying to set that tax value, which starts on January 1. So if you look at the dates, the start dates of all our TADs is December 31st of whatever year that it got started.
Didn't California retroactively close its TADs by dissolving its development?
So I'm not an expert in California, but I presume that if you know it, then you know it. We can Google, that's, in the journal speaks, the gentleman knows wherever he speaks. You're asking the question because you know the answer. Yes?
How, if at all, would this, would TADs, and particularly the Atlanta TADs, be affected by the proposals right now in the State House to eliminate property taxes?
So the question is, how would tax be impacted by the state's, some proposals to end property tax? Or to, there's all sorts of proposals, but yes, to slowly, income tax and property, everything's on the table right now in the General Assembly. So yeah, who knows exactly? This was also part of the conversation when Buckhead was looking to secede, because you have debt that's already covered by a certain geography, and if folks are choosing to leave, who covers that debt? So Atlanta's AAA credit rating would probably go away, as well as credit ratings across the state of Georgia. So presumably some folks, maybe after thinking about it, sleeping on it, might say, hey, this is maybe not the thing to do. Let's go ahead and work through those solutions and figure it out. But yes, without property taxes, none of the TAD stuff makes sense at all.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Working Families Power, for everything that y'all have done to make sure that this conversation could happen. Thank you to Allison and your team at Housing Justice League. Thank you, Johnny, for being here. Thank you to ACPC, let's make sure that this conversation can be live streamed so anybody can see it. We do have some upcoming events and programs that are happening, and also there are more conversations on TADS, just in case like you just can't get enough. And so the City of Atlanta's Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative Commission has an input session that is happening this Friday. Wow, is it Thursday? Yo, can we stop time for like 2 seconds? February 20th, so tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. At the City of Refuge. You can go there and give your input there. There will also be work sessions, and those are virtual, that are on Wednesday, March 4th, Friday, March 6th. You can get all this information if you subscribe to civicatlanta.org. And there's also kind of the rebranded Reinvest Forward ATL Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative conversation that's happening on Monday at Dad's Garage. That's happening during the day. That's at 12:30. So yeah, see you there. This is not going to be our last conversation. Also, we are going to repeat this conversation. Yep. There are things that I hope you learned. I learned not to wear a white shirt for this conversation. But there are upcoming talks we're going to be doing in different neighborhoods. Here's our real goal. Yes, I would love for you to come again. Maybe you'll be able to hear it again and learn something else. But the more important thing is if you can make sure that people who are in neighborhoods that are impacted, that are affected, other community leaders who may not fully have an understanding, maybe your elected official have to come to it if they don't fully understand what's going on. But it is very important for us to be able to have this conversation with people so that we can make sure that we're going to take all this information, we will publish it publicly for the city to have so they can do with it what they will. But on April 14th, we're going to be doing our Southeast Atlanta TADTalk. That's at the Rick McDevitt Youth Center. It's a really cool space. There's you should be able to get plenty of parking and all that. May 7th will be our West Side TADTalk. That's happening at the Connect. And then we are still working on the final details for our Southwest Atlanta TADTalk, which will be coming very soon after that. But it's it would just really this only works if this gets beyond an echo chamber. Like that's cool. Like y'all seem like very smart, driven, engaged people, but we have to get this to more people, more and more people. We're going to do our best, but we are a small organization that is trying to get this information out online. Wherever we have neighborhood relationships and communications, we are doing that, but we need your help. Not to just promote CCI, although you can. Again, the website is civicatlanta.org. Can you tell it's a tough funding season? Yes. But more importantly, it's important that you get this information to people. Like, hey, on our website, we actually do have a breakdown of everything we just presented. You can get a lot of that information. Someone could just sit there and read through it. It's all available there. We have videos that we've done. It would be really great for you to just make sure that other neighbors and other neighborhoods are engaged and informed in this. So, yes, ma'am.
Your only goal is to inform people. That's why you're having these talks. That's your only goal.
Yes, ma'am, as opposed to what?
Then in terms of which way the conversation should go.
So we're a 501c3. We are not trying to push the conversation one way or another. For us, our job is, and now there are some things that we don't believe are political, like the fact that this is disproportionately affecting Black neighborhoods and communities. That's not a political statement, that's fact. With that, TADs have been a tool that has done some good, but also has done some damage. That is not a political statement. That is that is based on data, right? So for us, that's what we're trying to do, is to allow people to come to their own decisions, their own conclusions. The City of Atlanta is putting out plenty of information that is swaying people one way or another. There are also other people who are swaying people in another direction. Our job is like, how can we get you the data so you could take this, get 10 of your friends around the table and have this conversation, and then they never come back to your house again. But we want you to have this so that you can actually have this conversation. I know it sounds weird because usually things like this are to push some sort of agenda. But for the past 12 years, our track record holds. We try to just make sure that people have the information they need to drive their own decisions. And that's important to us.
President,
Yes.
can I mention?
Yes, please.
So we being Working Families Power, we're not trying to push it one way or the other, but we do have a few like demands of the process, right? When it comes to transparency. So like we want strong anti-displacement protections included in working with the TADs. We want transparent oversight of the TAD revenues and a full audit prior to any extension of the TADs. We want input from impacted residents. And then we also want to make sure we're centering working families and communities of color in the decisions. So while we don't have a position on should we extend the TADs, do we want TADs, do we not want TADs, we're like regardless of what's happening, these are things that we feel like are extremely important to the process. And I think we're in agreement with that with Housing Justice League and Center for Civic Innovation. So.
Thank you for that reminder. Yep. Y'all are amazing. This warmed our nerdy little hearts to have you in this space. Hope to see you at the next event. We also have Civics 101 training. If you were like really feeling this and you're like, what about not TADs? What about talking about, how does the school board work? How does the budget process work? We teach multi-day Civics 101 classes here that you can be a part of. We would love to have you in the room for that as well. And thank you. CivicAtlanta.org. Please, thank you.
Show me how old this place was. Show me how